Hello learners, today I have come to you with the discussion of the Indian characters in the novel A Passage to India by E. M. Forster. We have got four major Indian characters in this novel. One is Dr. Aziz, the second Hamidullah, third Mahmood Ali, and fourth Professor Birdball. And Dr. Aziz is the central character of this novel. And there is a particular historical reason of making Dr. Aziz as the central character by E. M. Forster's A Passage to India. A book had been written by the English scholar William Hunter by the request of Sir Syed Ahmed about the Muslim community in India. You know that if we go back to the history, we will see that after the mutiny, which is called by the British, but we call that it is the first war of independence in India, 1857. The Muslim community in India was being persecuted at the hand of the British because the British colonial power accused the Muslim community for the mutiny, which they called or the war of independence. And there was a dominant reason they raised that Bahadur Shah Zafar had the last Mughal king had taken the commander-in-chief of this war, and the Indian troops, particularly the troops of Bahadur Shah Zafar, was defeated in the battle, and the British government took a certain kind of hostile attitude to the Muslim community. And not only that, if we see the history, the British started seizing the land of India, and the major portion of land was being seized by the British colonial power from the hand of the Muslim monarchs in India. So there was a very permanent grudge between the Muslim community and the British colonial power, and it had been cemented day by day. And after the mutiny in 1857, the British colonial power took a very strong sense of animosity against the Muslim community in India. And in order to change this sort of hostile attitude of the British imperial power to the Muslim community of India, Sir Syed Ahmed requested William Hunter to write a book so that the British government took a certain kind, so that the British government can take a certain changed view about the Muslim community. And William Hunter had written this book, The Indian Mussulman. The book became very famous, and E. M. Forster had read this book before writing his novel, and that is why he took a decision to take a central character of his novel from the Muslim community. And consequently, Dr. Aziz had been made the central character in this novel, A Passage to India. Dr. Aziz is a medical officer having every day very negative experience dealing with his boss, Civil Surgeon Calendar, who is the Civil Surgeon of Chandrapur Medical Hospital. He understood one thing very clearly, that he was a subjugated man under the British rule. He had to obey everything. But thing is that Dr. Aziz is a devout Muslim, following the religious rituals of Islam. And not only that, he liked to recite, he liked to make the narratives of the Muslim glory, the glorious history of the Muslim community in India. And he claims himself to be the direct descendant of the Mughal. Though he is living in the 20th century, he is obsessed with a kind of imagination that after the departure of the British colonial power in India, the Mughal would come once again to take the control of India. Though it is a very ridiculous feeling that a man living in the 20th century can imagine that Mughal would come once again after the departure of the British colonial power from India. It would be how it could be possible, because by this time the political developments took a certain kind of change. The political organizations have been formed. So the society was proceeding towards democracy. Democratic government would be established after the departure of the British. But Dr. Aziz, since he is a man of childlike attitude, a kind of simplicity. His simplicity allows him to think that the Mughal would come to take the control, and since he claimed to be the direct descendant of the Mughal, it is a pleasure for him that once again the Muslim community would come to India to take the control of administration. Dr. Aziz does not have any reservation against the British community, but he is getting bitter experience from the British officers, particularly from his boss. One incident or one instance is very, very important to be mentioned here, that one day he was called by his boss, Civil Surgeon Calendar. Dr. Aziz was called by Civil Surgeon Calendar to go to his bungalow. Dr. Aziz, during the time, was attending the dinner party given by one of his friends. But having this sort of call from his boss, Mr. Calendar, he started rushing towards the bungalow of his boss with a tanga. When he went to the bungalow of his boss, he found that his boss was absent. Calendar was not in his house. Even Calendar had forgotten that he had called Dr. Aziz to meet him. And the story is not ended here. When he came back and the tanga was waiting to receive him to return to his house, he found that Calendar's wife took his tanga without getting any sort of information. And this is a very simple instance that the reader can easily understand the relations between the British colonial power and the native Indian people, especially the native officers who are working under the British officers in different offices, in different capacities. Dr. Aziz, a man, is an amiable character. He has got an amiable character and childlike simplicity, as I have mentioned earlier. And through his childlike simplicity, he has been a very popular man among the people of Chandrapur in different levels. Another thing is that he is a very, very affectionate father. You know that he lost his wife several years ago, and he is a widower, but he is not thinking of entering into the matrimonial relation once again. It is his firm belief that his children would not be saved and secured at the hand of the stepmother. It is a firm belief of Dr. Aziz that a stepmother cannot love his stepchildren, and that is why he has discarded the idea of entering into the marital status once again, even being pressurized by his relatives. He starts living a very single life and managing his family by himself, and do not think of taking any change of his video life once again. When Dr. Aziz returned from the bungalow of his boss, Civil Surgeon Calendar, he entered into the mosque to pray and to get mental relief because he was mentally disturbed. But he encountered there with an English lady, and at the beginning, it seemed to him that this English lady might be a ghost. But when he came closer to that English lady, he found that she is a lady and she is an English lady. And this English lady is Mrs. Moore. And when they were exchanging their greetings, Mrs. Moore disclosed that she is the mother of the city magistrate of Chandrapur, Ronnie Heslaw. And there was a good connection between the two, Dr. Aziz and Mrs. Moore. And Dr. Aziz found a certain kind of sweetness in the mind of Mrs. Moore. And Dr. Aziz found this English lady something different from other English officers, from other English people. And their friendship had been happened very promptly. And Dr. Aziz came out with Mrs. Moore. Though at the beginning, Dr. Aziz reprimanded Mrs. Moore for her taking shows with her inside the mosque. When Dr. Aziz told her to put off it, she had done it. And Dr. Aziz was quite satisfied. And not only that, Mrs. Moore told Dr. Aziz that God is also here, that is in the mosque, which impressed Dr. Aziz very much. And both of them went out of the mosque, and when Dr. Aziz was leading Mrs. Moore to the club of Chandrapur, English club of Chandrapur, on the front gate, Mrs. Moore invited Dr. Aziz to enter into the club. But Dr. Aziz very painfully replied that the Indians are not allowed in the English club. And Mrs. Moore found that in the front gate there was a written signboard that dogs and Indians are not allowed. This is a very painful experience for Mrs. Moore, which exactly created a certain kind of sense in the mind of Mrs. Moore, and she could understand what kind of behavior the British officers were continuing to deal with the people of India. Dr. Aziz met another English lady, and she is Adela Quested, the proposed wife of Ronnie Heslop, the city magistrate of Chandrapur. But a very unpleasant incident took place in Maravar case, which led a litigation against Dr. Aziz filed by Adela Quested. And this incident took a serious dimension and direction in the life of the people of Chandrapur. When the prosecution was going on in the court's building against Dr. Aziz, a serious demonstration, unitedly demonstrated by the Hindus and Muslims, were going on around the court building. And the prosecution was going on. Ultimately, Dr. Aziz was exempted from the church, and Dr. Aziz became a hero among the people of Chandrapur after this incident. Next character I'd like to discuss, he is Mahmud Ali. Mahmud Ali is a lawyer, but not so prominent lawyer. He is a simple lawyer, but he supported Dr. Aziz in the litigation against Adela Quested. Mahmud Ali is one of the close friends of Dr. Aziz, but thing is that Mahmud Ali was not found a very courageous man. Mahmud Ali expected that when the litigation or the movement of the court, when the argument of the case of Dr. Aziz was going on in the court, it was the expectation of Mahmud Ali that Mrs. Moore would come and give her evidence in favor of Dr. Aziz, but mysteriously Mrs. Moore was absent. The critic tell that it was the conspiracy of Mrs. Moore's son, Ronnie Heslop. He did not allow his mother to come to the court to give her evidence in favor of Dr. Aziz. When Mahmud Ali found that Mrs. Moore was absent in the court, he quit the court promptly and left Dr. Aziz alone in the custody of the greatest lawyer, Amit Rao, who had been borrowed from Calcutta to plead in favor of Dr. Aziz, and who was famous for his very negative view against the British and the English people. Next character I'd like to talk about is Hamidullah. He is a famous lawyer, educated from Cambridge University, and he is a man highly experienced about the British nature. He made a very important comment in this novel that the friendship between the English and the India cannot be possible in Indian soil. It can be possible in England, in the soil of Britain. Why? Because the colonial people and the colonial ruler, the colonized people and the colonial ruler cannot be the friend. It is his belief that when the British will take the departure from India, there might be a good friendship between the British and the Indian people. Hamidullah is a very famous lawyer, and involved in different organizations. He is very much conscious about politics, but he does not believe in violence in politics. He also wants the independence of India, but not in violence or any violent activity. He believes in achieving independence through negotiations, through talking, through seminars, symposium, through creating awareness among the people. Hamidullah is one of the relatives of Dr. Aziz because Hamidullah married one of the relatives of Dr. Aziz. Hamidullah is uncle of Dr. Aziz as well as friend. Hamidullah also played a very important role in favor of Dr. Aziz when the litigation was going on against him in the court. He hired best lawyers like Amit Rao from Calcutta. Hamidullah is also a very enlightened man, and giving a certain kind of consciousness among the people of Chandrapur against the British, but not in violent way, but in a very disciplined and peaceful and tranquil manner. The last Indian character, which is very interesting, is Professor Birdball. He is a professor serving in Chandrapur Government College under Professor Fielding, the principal of Chandrapur Government College. Professor Fielding and Birdball were supposed to attend the expedition of Malabar case with Dr. Aziz, Adila Quested and Mrs. Paul. But it was due to the delay of Professor Birdball in his morning prayer. Professor Fielding and Mr. Birdball could not attend this expedition, and that is why it was very golden. It was very easy for making the misunderstanding between Adila Quested and Dr. Aziz, which led a very, very unpleasant situation later on. And these are the characters I have made the discussion, and these are the Indian characters which are very important, and these characters had played a very important role in this novel. A reader can understand their role played in different capacities in this novel. E.M. Forster is very much calculated to select the characters from different professions, from different backgrounds, exactly to make a very, very vivid picture of the British rule in India. If a reader can read this novel thoroughly, he will be able to make a very clear picture in his mind's eye about the British administration of 190 years in India. Today I have completed the discussion of the characters in this novel. In next week I'll come to you with the subject matter of this novel as well as the summary of this novel for the easy comprehension of the learners. Now I'd like to tell one thing, that the world is running into a certain kind of uncertainty, a kind of apprehension, a kind of irregularity due to the COVID-19, which is creating every day a paralyzing situation in the noble movement of mankind all over the world. We are the teachers community. Once again, I'd like to utter that committed and determined to continue the learning process by our endeavors, and we have been doing so. Different educational institutions from the different capacities have been doing this. We, the teachers of Kendriya College, are deeply committed under the consolidated leadership of our capable principal, Professor Syed Zafar Ali. And we hope that this process of continuation of dispensing education and making bridge, once again I'd like to tell, between the learners and the teachers shall be continued, inshallah. Until then, Allah Hafiz.